So now you might think all of those problems with the train, you might think, whoa, how is this train going to stay on the tracks? How is it going to keep going in the right direction? Well, the trick is it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because this is where the story really goes off the rails.
Nice.
The train derails.
One of the few times when saying this goes off the rails is actually literal and not a figure of speech.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So, this is Standard Humans. I'm Evan.
I'm Aiden.
That one's Declan.
Yeah.
Welcome back to our series on the Ottawa O-Train. Oh boy, it's been a good one. This is part 3 of maybe 3. We'll see where we get to. Maybe a little bit more, but...
Maybe 10. Who knows?
It might keep going. They might just keep doing shit. They might not have given up yet on this O-Train shit, but we'll see how it goes.
There has been developments while we've been recording. It's in between recording sessions.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting up to very much up to the present, I think, towards the end of this, which is very good.
Yeah, so to summarize, basically episode 1 was like the prehistory of the O-Train, like Ottawa Transit for all of time. And then, Aiden, do you have the notes?
Mate, I cannot fucking skim the notes that bad.
Yeah,
okay.
it was
like 60 pages or something.
Damn. Wow.
I can. It was.
Please, yeah, Declan, do you have a?
Yeah, you
summary?
Declan, the
Like
knowledge
we
keeper.
went over like what type of transit services and stuff, and then went over like the history of transit in Ottawa. Like all the way back to like Indigenous people first, and then the streetcar system, but really mainly like post 1973 OC Transpo, bus rapid transit system. Then there's like the pilot project that was really good, and then the failed extension of the pilot project, and then we kind of got into this new Confederation line being built. That was episode 2.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna restate the legend real quick. So, or like just to clear it up. The Confederation line, red line, line 1, and then green line, Trillium line, line 2. Those are the 2 lines with their different aliases.
Very good. Yeah.
Yes.
And then in episode 2, we got into the 2010 municipal election and all the shit that went down during that, the procurement model that was used, a lot of issues with the train quality and the train selection, the testing. Oh my God, the shit that went on into testing.
Yeah.
And the influence of a secret cabal known as the WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
Which, oh boy. I feel like that's part of what takes this story to the next level over the usual transit shenanigans is the corruption involved.
Just the lads trying to figure out how to cheat on their city hall homework.
Mm-hmm. Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
They kind of rushed through their homework, but they left it to the last night. It's not
honestly relatable.
It is relatable.
Same.
Especially relatable to RTG, who apparently also left their homework to last night.
Yeah, they're like, which is Rito Transit Group. It's like, basically. So what we're talking about is, again, the end of the summary would be like, there was a WhatsApp group of what is it, Alan, Jim Watson, but he came in a little bit later. Who are the other 2 again? What were their names?
John Manconi and Steve Kanalakanos. All city officials. I forget their exact titles. So.
Yeah, basically, it was Steve's job, right? Steve's job?
Yeah, he was like city manager, I think
John,
or something.
Yeah.
It was either Steve's job or John's job to just look at the results of the testing and tell city council what happened. But instead of doing that, he had this WhatsApp group where he's like, guys, what should I tell council and what should I keep secret from council? And then they decided.
Basically. Yeah. Which is not very much not what you want. And then going from there in this episode, there's like 1 or 2 points to like backtrack on and cover, I think, or corrections to make from previous ones. But then we want to really get into the grand opening and all of the problems that have happened since it's really started operation, which I think people who have lived in Ottawa and taken the train will be a little familiar with, because this is when things start to really hit the public and the problems get real obvious.
Taking the train or not.
Very true in a lot of cases, or not.
Yeah. Attempted.
Not the replacement buses, no.
No, I hate the R1 so much.
Yeah, rough.
Insert that meme of that guy in the morning when like the O-Train's canceled. Did you see that? It was just a video from the news of Tunney's pasture, and they're talking about how the train's canceled again, and it's just this one guy like, like just like with the most like pissed off, or not even pissed off, just like bewildered face that the train is canceled once again, and people heartily related.
Yeah.
Yeah, that checks out. That checks out.
Yeah.
All right, and then I guess
hero.
Is one last thing to add before we jump into a couple of the points to cover. Is that I think the whiskey pairing for this episode is probably an Isla, as I have here, the Ardbeg 10, because just as the Scotch producers of Isla use peat that they have dug from the earth, they use this dirt in order to power the flames and dry the barley that they use to create such excellent Scotch. So should OC Transpo use the bullshit that has occurred as their flame to power the future successes, maybe, hopefully, of OC Transit into the future.
Is this sponsored?
No.
By Ardbeg 10? Yeah, no, it's not. That'd be nice, though. That'd be pretty alright.
It would be very nice, yeah.
I would
good shit.
And they would literally just need to give us one bottle of Ardbeg 10 ever, probably. Shout out.
Every episode forever. Sponsored by.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I was just I just spent a bit much time earlier thinking, what would be a good pairing? What would thematically go with this episode? Because I'm getting a bit much of a whiskey collection going, which is a good time.
I'd say I'd probably pair this with a Carling Ice, which is
not familiar.
It's an extremely low quality beer. just cause it just seems like, you know, you could crack open I would guess that's the beer of choice for people whilst sitting on the O-Train, you know? So seems right. And there's also Carling Avenue in Ottawa, so yeah, Carling Ice. And ice messes up the train, so
that's true. Wow, so much crossover, so much themes. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Just speaking of like ice messing up the train, it was so funny. I was at a open house thing for the Eglinton Crosstown West extension the other day, just like a virtual one, because I was like, I just joined their newsletter and I was curious. And there's like a big Q&A at the end, and one of the questions was basically like, Ottawa's train doesn't do well with the weather. Why are you making a portion of this elevated? Isn't that bad? They basically said, this is a really common thing to do. We have a lot of elevated sections in Toronto as is crossing rivers. It's a really common structure where we do this a lot. It's going to be okay.
It's actually pretty impressive they messed it up as bad as they did. See the C train, you know, that's in Calgary. That's way worse than here or Ottawa for weather. They run it kind of fine. It is possible.
Anyways, okay, moving on. 2 points to cover or to fill in some stuff from the last episode. One was that I was furiously Googling and trying to figure out where the heck the Citadis Duelist had been used. I looked at the report, and I think it's just like 2 places that used it before. Which, again, to recap, the Citadis Duelist was the train that was vaguely what the Citadis Spirit, the train that Ottawa eventually got, was based on. So it had not been that widely used. It had been used, but not very widely.
So where were the 2 places?
I think it was in France. That's where most of, I think, the trams that Alstom make run.
Famously harsh-weathered France.
Exactly. Yeah. Though, again, it's a different train. It's not the same train as that. So that was not exactly, I think, correct to say that it's service proven, but oh well.
Yeah.
I think I would actually say it's wrong.
I think so, yeah.
Also, is that a Thor poster in the background, Declan? I just noticed that. Is that new?
It is a Thor poster.
Not terribly. I think we got that from like a few years ago.
Yeah.
Nice.
Christmas one year?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then The other point that I wanted to bring up, because I glanced through the report a little bit earlier and was just like, holy shit, what the hell is this? Is that Alstom didn't have tracks to test on until like much later than they needed to, because if you recall, they really rushed their proposal, and in their original proposal they were like, all right, we're going to get the components from the North American suppliers, we're going to ship all of it to France, and we're going to build it and test the trains there, and then move them back over to Canada. And then
Very
later on
smart
they were
move.
I feel like that would have been better because they have existing like testing tracks and whatnot in France.
I guess that's true. Yeah, like for cost and both environmental and financial, I guess that would be more, but
Mhm.
it would also work probably.
Maybe a little bit better.
They
But
probably
instead of
wouldn't
that,
have messed up their
instead of
results
that,
intentionally.
they decided to test on the O-Train tracks because they were like, they'll be ready in time. They'll have that shit with plenty of time for us to test on. And they did not. They were several years delayed. And instead of having like 4.5 kilometer segment of fully electrified tracks going, I think they were expecting that in like 2016. It wasn't until late into 2017 that they got a single kilometer of track that they could use for like 5 or 6 hours a day because there was still construction going on, so they couldn't electrify it all the time.
Very nice.
So like they just did not have the opportunity to test until very late into the project. Like basic vehicle testing, that shit that should have been done before they built all of them, was going on well until like 2019.
Adds up. Speaking
Yeah.
of what is it? Freaking testing and stuff. Backtracking a little bit. What was the situation at the Eglinton Crosstown open house?
Oh, you mean in terms of people were people upset about shit?
No. Like, is it gonna open ever?
So it was not about that. They stressed that a couple times that this was about the Eglinton Crosstown West extension, and that is a separate project from the Eglinton Crosstown.
Oh,
Right, because they've already started tunneling the section that goes to Renforth, kind of by Pearson.
oh, okay.
Yeah, they're adding another like 9 kilometers or so, I think, onto it. So they didn't have any answers or anything about about the main project. But it was interesting. The meeting was mostly about like ecological impacts and like replanting and regrowth and stuff like that, which was kind of neat.
Nice.
Yeah,
Very nice.
they put a lot of time and effort into like mocking up what stuff will look like 5, 10, 30 years after they've like planted stuff.
Wow.
But anyways, we should get into some O-Train.
We should get
Now,
into some more
now that we've summarized, now that we've added a few things that were skipped or need correcting in the last episode, should we get to the grand opening?
The grand
please.
opening.
It's about to happen.
Oh my god. We're gonna open the train and nothing will go wrong.
Yeah, if we remember from last time, testing went exceedingly well. There were no problems. They passed the phase where we reverted to the 2017 standards with flying colors.
Yeah.
Everything's good. There's no issues.
They passed the tests really well. They also changed the test before that, but
And we're also allowed to just pass themselves if they wanted to.
Yeah, and they did want to.
And they did want to.
Yeah, self-assessment is a valid form of assessment.
Yeah. They always say that you'll be like more harsh on yourself if you get like your like say quarterly like assessment or whatever. They're always like, because you'll probably identify your own strengths and weaknesses better than we will. It's like that does not stand up for the O-Train.
Truly, you know yourself better than anyone can know you. So obviously, having some kind of external third-party objective critique would just be unfair, or would just be inaccurate. Really.
Yeah, exactly.
Inaccurate and unfair, totally unjust.
The O-Train should be self-defined if it's working or not.
All right, so Declan, tell us about how great the opening phase went.
So obviously, since the O-Train is working perfectly in the testing phase and nothing went wrong, they decide, well, RTG wants to do a soft launch, keep bus service, build up the train service over time to higher frequencies, more time and stuff. But the city says it's entitled to full service day one, so that's what they do. Full service day one.
I like how assertive they are.
Yeah, they're really good at asserting their contractual rights. The city.
That they are. And I guess for listeners, a soft launch would basically be where you just open it for like a day or like a couple days, and you're like, okay, we're opening this basically to test and make sure that once people get on it, it's good. And the idea, I think, with soft opening is usually that you'll then like take like a few weeks off to like see how that went and fix any issues that almost certainly came up because you're opening it blind, or in this case, really a new system.
Yeah. I think that's what they did with the REM as well, right? They opened it for like a weekend, closed it back down, and then
The Montreal or the Réseau Express Montreal, the like big new subway project going on in Montreal. I'm thinking we might need to do a series on that too, because that's actually a base project that I feel like would be a good counterexample of how to do things right.
Sick and chill LRT.
Not LRT. Is it light metro
subway,
or full metro?
Subway.
I would definitely call it light metro. I don't know what type of vehicles, honestly.
I don't know, but based. They're automated. The system has platform screen doors. It's and then once it's all open, it's gonna double the size of the Montreal Metro.
Wow, and that's a good metro already. So,
which is exactly what you said, I think, in the last 2 episodes when we mentioned it too.
I just can't. Yeah, man.
It's still good. It's still true. It's still based.
It's still good. Shout out to my homie, the Montreal Metro. It's quiet because it's on those rubber wheels. It's great.
Yeah. So there's no soft launch here, and a variety of things happened when it opened. Some that the city and RTG probably knew would happen because of what they found out in testing, and some that were maybe more unforeseeable, or there just should have been some more care taken when opening the system. And just keep this in mind also while they're opening the system, like RTG and the city still like hate each other. they still have like litigation that hasn't been resolved yet. They have not necessarily liked working with each other at this. And so, here's some of the problems that happened are, the door problems.
We're familiar with the door problems. I think everyone is familiar with the door problems.
If you're familiar with the opening, this was the famous one, I feel like. Mm-hmm. The doors don't work. They would not function properly is just how I'll leave it. It has been fixed by now, by the way. Just
yeah. I mean, they fixed that within days. That was just so funny that like on a fundamental level, the doors didn't work. Which I mean makes sense. The like crush load people like trying to pile in and catch their train and holding doors is very different than some testing. But like they found those issues in testing. I think we covered before.
Yeah, I remember taking the train very soon after it opened. But the main reason that I was like, because I was working in Gatineau at the time, so commuting from Ottawa to from Canada to Gatineau every day. But I was hyped when it opened because then for some reason it caused the introduction of a new like Canada to Gatineau single bus route. And so I was hyped about it, but I didn't even take it. So it's just like, ooh, thanks for this new bus route, train.
That's neat. Yeah, that's actually very convenient. Maybe that's just like freeing up buses because, like Declan said, they didn't do a soft launch where they kept the bus routes in service. Immediately had other buses to dedicate things.
Yeah, I guess so.
And the fact that it wasn't a soft launch caused some problems with the buses, just because they spread out those buses to other lines and stuff. So when they had to do replacement service, when the train was down, they would have to take all those buses from those other routes, and
you immediately have to cut service on the lines that you've just like added service to, because you now need these buses again because they didn't keep them in reserve because they're like, what could go wrong with the new train?
Reserve.
Okay, that's fair. As based as it sounds to have a Canada to Gatineau route, they probably should have like waited a couple weeks.
I would imagine. Is this why sometimes if you were just waiting at Pimisi, there would be like the live tracker thing at the stop for buses, and then sometimes they would just drop off?
I don't know why the why the live tracker is sometimes wrong.
But
Is that
like,
what
I
you're
remember
saying?
I would often be waiting for a bus to like go across the bridge to Gatineau. They'd be like, okay, this one's coming in 10 minutes. Okay, 9 minutes. Okay, 8 minutes. And then it just disappears off the tracker. And I'm like, what?
I think I've had that happen to me before.
Yeah.
Interesting. I
I
mean,
don't
it's
know.
OC Transport. It might have
So-
just gotten canceled.
Yeah,
Or it could have
sometimes
just
it's
disappeared. I don't know.
just the schedule time is being shown and not the actual GPS, and then it just like switches.
And then it checks GPS and it's like, wait a minute.
Maybe it just doesn't exist. It's just the bus
Bus
never
is in
went.
Montreal. It's not coming anytime soon.
Yeah.
But yeah. But also these maintenance issues. The only option for the city to fix these problems is to flood RTM is the maintenance division of RTG.
Kind of just like a separate division. Well, a separate company, but basically a separate division for like maintenance. So it's like RTG, the Rideau Transit Group builds it, and then RTM maintains it for like the 30 years they contracted.
Yeah, even RTG and other sub companies build the project too.
Mm.
But the report talks about RTM a lot, so I'll use them for maintenance. It's fine. And flood RTM and Alstom with work orders and then reduce maintenance payments because of reliability issues, which just flooding them with work orders and reducing payments to them doesn't necessarily help fix problems, as we've learned with
Yeah,
kind of
because
this
again,
entire
to go
project.
back to like how the whole thing's set up, the city's only tool here is basically to hit the like fine button, and now that the thing's going, the like work order button to give them like a report saying like fix this, fix this, fix this, and like just like dock them pay because it's not reliable because it's not working.
So then, just to go over some of the maintenance issues, we got the door faults, like we talked about. There was issues with power supply in the trains, which apparently wasn't fully fixed. Oh, pardon?
What was up with that?
They had a new supplier, of course, because
That'll
of the
do it.
Canadian content requirements, and apparently they didn't work too well together. It wasn't fixed by the time the report was done, apparently, but they were working on replacing the supplier with someone else. There was train control management issues. Apparently the trains would reboot at the end of the line, which they didn't want.
Like the software just turned off and on again automatically when it hit the end of the line.
Apparently, yeah.
Wow.
So they did a software update and solved that eventually.
Yeah.
Patched the train.
Yeah. There was track buckling. I'm not sure if this is fully fixed, but tracks got too hot in the summer.
What is track?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know what that is, but it
So-
sounds serious.
It's like the tracks, I think, get closer together, right? They buckle, I guess, if you will. And I just got a quote here because I don't really understand it from some guy from Alstom said, "You'll get the rails squiggling off to the sides like spaghetti."
That does check out to me because remembering engineering classes, buckling is basically if you have like a metal rod, it's when forces are applied basically going opposite directions. So say like towards the center from either side. And eventually if you just get enough like force going on each of them, the thing will buckle. It'll like essentially snap or like twist up or like bend because it just cannot handle the forces. So that actually makes sense because in the summer the tracks expand, and as they expand, it's all like pushing against each other.
Exactly.
So then it would just become a squiggly mess.
And it couldn't extend, I'm guessing. So it's probably anchored pretty well on either ends.
Because it's like multi-kilometer tracks. There's nowhere for it to extend to.
But that sounds like a pretty serious issue, I'll say.
Yeah.
It does.
Apparently it kind of created a word. I'm not entirely sure if it's been solved, but it definitely caused some maintenance headaches because they have to, in the short term, or had to de-stress the rails by, I guess, like detaching them and reattaching them, kind of, so that they could do their thing without snapping, I guess.
That makes sense.
Again, I'm not...
To walk the rails.
Yeah, I'm guessing that would be like how if you're building like a house and you've got like wooden floors or something. If you're building it in the winter, wood's like naturally contracted, and then during the summer it expands. So you try and like build in a little bit of buffer space between it if you're doing it, say, like in the winter, assuming it will like expand more. Otherwise, it's just going to get all like warped out of shape over the summer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, apparently, long term, their plan was or is to do a report on what the neutral temperature should be. It wasn't done by the town commission, so I'm not entirely sure what the progress on that is or how that works. But yeah,
Fair, okay, but
There
they're
was-
still working on it, basically.
I think so. There was also wheel problems, which in particular, at the start here, there was wheel flats and cracked wheels, which
Again, sounds pretty serious.
yes, the wheel flats happened in the wintertime because the trains would use emergency braking when they wouldn't stop and start precisely how they wanted it to. So sometimes the trains would use their emergency brakes to stay away from the train in front of them or whatever.
That makes sense, because at least in my mind, what's happening there is because if you remember, it's like steel on steel, right? Steel wheels on steel tracks. If you do like an emergency brake, I assume that would just halt it in place and lock it in place. So then the whole thing's just skidding along these steel tracks. And I assume that means that it would just get like grinded down on one side of the wheel. Because I was immediately thinking, how do you get a flat on a steel tire? But I guess if you did that.
It's exactly like how if you can get a flat spot skateboarding is if you just like are going forwards and then just I don't know like skid sideways like perpendicular to the direction of the wheel down a ramp or something by accident. If you do that like decently hard, then you can get a flat spot because it just grinds off part of the wheel.
Probably.
Yeah, that's
Interesting.
yeah. The wheel's getting flat. Not
That's not what you
good.
want.
No, doesn't really work as well.
So apparently there was also the wheel flats could be fixed by a wheel lathe, and there was one wheel lathe that they had, and it was out of commission for long periods because the one repair person they had was overseas for long periods of time.
Yeah. One repair person?
Apparently.
Oh my god. What?
I don't know how that worked, but yeah, I think they allowed a change in braking, which I think has fixed this problem. But yeah, then there is cracked wheels. Once again, Alstom is using a new supplier, and they incorrectly installed jacked screws in the wheels, and that was on I think all of the wheels, which caused damage to the wheels over time. And the issue wasn't fully solved until February 2022, so it has been solved, and it was the part of one of the first investigations that the TSB, or the Transportation Safety Board, did into the O-Train. So finally the feds, if you will, taking over some of the safety a little bit, which they delegated to the city right at the start of this project.
Yeah, and like, oh my god, with all of these, we just can't emphasize enough, like we talked about before, how much new shit is happening with all of this. Like, this is all new suppliers for Alstom. Not only have they kind of like stretched service proven, saying that like all the components, they've been used before, just not together. They're also getting the components from new suppliers because they got to get them from like Canadian and other like North American suppliers.
Yeah.
So it's all just new shit, all being built in a maintenance facility, as we talked about last time, with people who have never done this before.
All of this project really does feel like last minute homework because it's like, especially with all the parts have been used before. We're not inventing a new part. We're just putting them all together in a way that hasn't been put together before. But it's service proven because the parts, we're not literally like designing our own individual components.
So they probably had to do, they did have to do a number of modifications, I think, to a lot of them. So honestly, a lot of new shit still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very rushed homework.
Yeah. So, yeah, all of those maintenance problems, and I think even more. Like I just listed them out, but they were all happening simultaneously while the train was launched in full, right at the get-go, kind of thing. So
Yeah, like, is this the first few like weeks basically of like all the issues that happened? I guess like months maybe for some of them.
yeah, some of them took even years to fix.
Some of them are ongoing.
Some of them are ongoing.
I should have checked occasional transport.
It looks like it's running right now.
Oh, good. Is
Yeah,
it
2 days since the last incident. So now you might think all of those problems with the train, you might think, whoa, how is this train going to stay on the tracks? How is it going to keep going in the right direction? Well, the trick is, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because this is where the story really goes off the rails.
Nice.
The train derails. It doesn't just...
One of the few times when saying this goes off the rails is actually literal and not a figure of speech.
Yes.
And it doesn't just derail once, also. It derails twice.
It's also what you don't want.
It was only a month apart as well.
When we're talking derailment, like I picture like Spider-Man 2, like shit is falling off the tracks, but like what does that actually look derailment?
I think seeing pictures of it is like the train didn't just like fly off the tracks. It just kind of like derailed a bit and then kind of skid along for a while. Especially, I think the first derailment it didn't go for that long, but the second derailment it kind of just like went and skid along the tracks kind of for like half a kilometer.
Wow.
There's like a picture of it and it's still like kind of on the tracks. Like I think it might have been like 1 or 2 bogies down that actually fell off, so the front was still on and the back was still on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it kind of depends, because some derailments can be really severe. Think like, what was it, Palestine, Iowa? That like massive derailment a while back.
East Palestine.
East
Yeah.
Palestine, Iowa. Yeah.
Palestine.
Or some Palestine.
Palestine. True, they call it Palestine for some reason.
Yeah.
Palestine. Okay. Sure. But sometimes it's like if there's an issue with the first one, the rest will just like almost like zigzag, all get like cranked out of place. Sometimes it'll like end up on its side. So it can be very dangerous. But this one didn't seem as bad, which is mostly a matter of luck.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Also, no one was injured in either of the derailments. I think the first derailment, it was just the operator on board. And the second one, there was like 12 people. They were okay.
That's good.
So we can laugh at the things.
Oh yeah. Just looking at these pictures here, yeah, it's just like slightly. The train just became zigzaggy.
Yeah. It just
But only slightly. I think I might be using one of the photos of that for the cover image for this episode.
Hey.
So y'all will be able to see.
But yeah, it became zigzaggy. Like I'm trying to think of a scale, like a lightning bolt. Not that. Yeah.
Depends on how aggressive you were as for drawing lightning bolts as a child. But
that's true. I was pretty chill. I was pretty
okay.
tame,
So it's chill lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was finding the quickest route, the lightning bolt. So the first derailment, there was a problem with the axle bearing, and they shut down the train for 5 days and put in a new safety regimen where they would check the axle bearings every 7,500 kilometers, and then they put it back into service. And a month later, it derailed again, but this time
is this the same specific train we're talking, or?
I am not sure. It didn't mention that anyway. I don't. So I kind of assume it's not, but it could be. Actually, it derailed like probably. I don't know. Who knows?
You would hope it's not, but it might be.
I'm not sure if it's the same train. Actually, that's a good question. But the cause of this one was different. It was completely undisputed, apparently, a failure of the Alstom maintenance to properly tighten some bolts, and so the motor assembly falling off the axle and wheel. The motor assembly.
That sounds worse.
Yeah, I think that's the main picture that we're looking at. is up the second one. Yeah, it was bad. And the system this time wasn't shut down for 5 days. It was shut down for 54 days.
A while.
Yeah, I think definitely
So
the
wait,
longest.
what dates are we talking now for these 54 days for the shutdown?
Oh, yes, sorry. The first derailment was in August 2021, and the second derailment was in September 2020. Also a really bad time for it to derail, I guess, as well. September being the most, the highest ridership of the year.
September being busy, but 2021 being not a very high ridership year. So at least it had that going for it.
That's true. The lockdowns definitely, I guess, helped the situation.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Imagine, so that there were probably like 5 people on the train when it derailed.
Yeah, there was 12.
Yeah, jeez.
So,
that's an empty train.
Out of like a capacity of 600 people.
Yeah.
On like September 19th. I don't know if this was I don't know what time.
Definitely a saving grace. Because I think the other derailment that comes to mind is the Scarborough Rapid Transit one, and I think a few dozen people were injured in that, though no one died, or I think was too seriously injured. But there was a lot of people on that.
Everyone got jostled real hard.
Yeah, pretty much. And a few people injured, but not as bad as it could have posed.
Yeah.
Okay, but so it's basically Alstom maintenance, not tightening some bolts enough.
Yes.
Not good.
Not good. Apparently they found that Alstom did not have a robust enough quality control system in place. They have since updated this. And periodic inspections were changed from 7,500 kilometers last month to 3,750 kilometers. They would inspect.
It's quite an increase.
Yeah, it's twice as much.
And they would just change out the bogies every 175,000 kilometers.
For non-trained people, what's a bogey?
It's just the wheel sets, basically the wheels, as far as I know, and the system.
Aren't there 2 types of train bogies? Like, aren't there also the things in the LRT? Aren't those also bogies?
Like in a low floor one?
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're talking about the same thing. Because with a low floor one, like you know how on high floor things like subways, it's all like a pretty consistent floor, but on low floor things like streetcars or the LRT, they have seats that are like risen up. That's basically to account for the bogies that Declan's talking about, because the wheels are there because the floor is so low that a section of it has to go up where the wheels are and then come back down again.
I see.
So that is the same
I'm with
thing.
you now.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like old streetcars and whatnot are always so funny to look at because they have like one bogie. So it's just like one set of wheels right in the middle. It's this real like long boy balancing, kind of precarious looking, but I assume it was fine on like 4 sets of wheels at the very middle of the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a narrow center of gravity.
I think Ottawa's streetcar network, apparently they were very late to adopt double bogie streetcars. They were still building the single one pretty late.
We do our own thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how frequently you'd normally change out the bogies? Because I assume you would eventually, like just wear and tear. But every 17 or 175,000 kilometers, I assume that's frequent since they're going down to that.
I'm not sure, but bogies will. This is actually a long amount of time compared to what we'll see later.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
That's some comparison to go off of, at least.
Oh, true. We haven't gotten to recent events yet with the wheels and bogies. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So then we can talk about what's happening now. Kind of. We're almost done with the report from the inquiry, you know. Just the last part of the inquiry is the recommendations.
Okay.
Excellent.
On what to do.
That's
what should
good.
Ottawa do? And they should kick it. The report gives 103 recommendations for the city, provincial, and federal governments, and recommendations I think they've made it through 56 of them so far. The city.
So about we're talking over a third.
Yeah, that's like over half. D6 out of like 103.
Oh, 103.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said 143. Oh, okay, that's not bad at all. I mean, hopefully they get through all of them, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's only been a year since the report came out. Or
that's not
actually
bad.
about a year as
Yes.
of recording.
It's almost, yeah. So just to go over some of the recommendations, I think we kind of touched on some of them while going through the report, but
Yeah,
you
good
know,
to summarize.
in the planning phase of a transit project, you want to make sure you have good priorities, not necessarily just cost certainty and schedule certainty, but other things maybe in the public interest, like reliable
safety.
transportation.
Oh, and safety. So.
And safety. This is a
That's
very
true.
good
You'd
point.
think that would be a big
Yeah.
consideration or a bigger consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, also just honesty about potential shortcomings and planning for those potential shortcomings. Like the amount of optimism at the start of this project for doing something completely new in a lot of ways. Or not something, like a lot of things completely new.
Yeah.
Was not necessarily great to have. It should have been planned for, at least, the potential shortcomings there. For budgets, do not make budgets out of preliminary estimates.
Yeah.
That's still insane. Got to stay on
Like-
time and on budget based on this 5% complete design of the system.
I'm assuming, like, sure, maybe he's like, okay, we need to set something aside because we need to, like, do whatever city budgeting thing, like, in the future. But, yeah, allow for a gigantic wiggle room there, I would say, as much as you can. Or just accept that it's not the budget at all and just wait till there is one.
Yeah.
I think more so the latter. Like a budget isn't actually a thing, and that just fully wasn't a budget. Like that's a different thing. That's an estimate.
That's spitballing.
You get to a budget later, and then you can be like, okay, here's what it is. I mean, you're right in that like you do need to secure funding. Like it seemed like a big part of the issue was like the province and the feds being like, no, this is your budget. We will give you money to fund this amount, but they also need to be less strict on that.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say another recommendation, which was interesting, was that maybe Ontario could explore if they force a city to use the P3 model, project delivery model, they could maybe pay for the extra costs associated with the P3 model. That could be part of the budgeting, but I don't know if Ontario will actually do that.
But yeah, I mean, that would be nice if they actually force you to do it a specific way for them to pay for the way they want you to do it. But
we'll see.
Also, man, I was just gonna say, it's so annoying on time, on budget things as well, because like I feel like it feels as though that's something that you almost like can't argue with, because it's like, yeah, of course you want it to be like on time, on budget, like no delays, no like passing the deadline, no going over budget at all. But like in trying to achieve that, cities like around the world have massively increased the cost of transit in trying to like make sure that they absolutely do not go over the budget. And that kind of makes sense in terms of like they're just like over designing and like defensive designing to make sure that like as much as humanly possible they factor everything in and design and like build in such a way that like they cannot possibly go over. It just like costs a lot more to have that level of certainty, and then they end up going over anyways because it's a complex project and shit just comes up, and the more complex you make it, the more likely that is to happen. So it just ends up getting even more expensive than it would have been in the first place.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say, yeah, on time, on budget is fine. But if you have to go the apparent Eglinton Crosstown route where it's like, okay, those are nice. But we're making where it would be nice to be on time and or on budget. But the number one priority is making it a good functional system. And so we're doing that first. And if it goes over time or over budget, then so be it.
100%. Yeah.
Not. Okay, push it out. We got to release it.
Yeah.
We got to drop the train.
That would be a good counterexample to do at some point, because I also recently realized that was Metrolinx's first like major project. I say it is their first major project because it's still ongoing, because they were only created in like 2006 or 7, I think. And they'd been running like the Go network before that, but they hadn't like built a system from scratch before. So it's a lot of learnings and firsts there too that I feel like have contributed to a lot of the delays.
What's
I
the what's
digress.
the current date for the crosstown?
Oh, there isn't one.
None at all?
No, they still have not committed to anything at this point. They kind of gave up on that a while back because they couldn't meet any of it. There were just too many issues and too much uncertainty going on. It seems like it's likely going to be 2024. Like actually at this point, like that's what people seem to be planning for. But who's to say? Definitely not early 2024.
No.
But I think they are in the testing phase for the most part at this point and are working through issues. They're just actually taking their time in the testing phase to sort out the issues, which is good. But
yeah,
I know it's frustrating.
I want it to open so bad. It's right by my house.
Same. It would be incredible.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah. We'll see. Hopefully I don't move apartments before that. Or if I do, hopefully it's along the line.
Honestly, you might, but
I probably will.
I mean, it's still a really useful line, or it still will be a really useful line once it opens.
That'll be my one requirement for wherever I'm moving. It must be on the future Eglinton Crosstown line.
Oh, so you can't be on the current Eglinton Crosstown line once it opens. You have to move out to the like more west end.
Oh no,
where it will be in opening in the 2030s.
All Eglinton Crosstowns are the future Eglinton Crosstowns.
All Eglinton Crosstowns are.
Yeah,
exactly.
All of them do not exist yet.
That they don't.
I really hope that we're not just proven super wrong and it's just as fucked as the O-Train when it opens, because then we're just going on like, oh yeah, they're taking the time and testing. It's actually supposed to be good. They're not dedicated to the specific release date or whatever opening date. But yeah, so I hope we're not proven wrong.
I mean, there'll probably be some level of issues with it. Just I feel like in looking more into this and in diving more into transit generally, one of the things that just keeps getting hit home as you like look more and more into it is just how freaking complex and hard to do these projects are. Like the scale and the level of like systems and infrastructure and integration, both to like build it and then to run it in like a safe and efficient manner. There's just like so many people and so much time and effort into it that is hard to comprehend at like an individual level of, especially someone who's not like totally versed in it, like how it all manages to function. But it does. And that's not to say we shouldn't hold them to, high standards. We should. There's just also an appreciation of like, shit, it do be hard though.
Speaking of which, so for the modern era of O-Train, I was around when the most recent, I guess, catastrophic failure happened, because it directly followed Blues Fest Day.
Yes.
Yeah. And I either biked to Blues Fest or took the train every single time. Biking was fantastic because this year they actually had a free bike check, as in like a coat check.
Oh,
worked the same way, where they have like a fenced off bike garage where you give an attendant your bike and they put a number on it and give you a ticket with that number. And you leave and then come back at the end and here's my number, where's my bike, please? And it was all free, so that was super nice. But the train was also nice because it didn't break during Blues Fest, but that was the most full I've seen the O-Train, but still, like, it was definitely within what should have been the estimated capacity, as in like it was like taking line 1 downtown at 8:40 a.m. Like it's full. Most of the standing room's full and everything, but like we're not Tokyo people pushing yet. So
true.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've been here after the shutdown as well.
I've been, but I haven't taken the O-Train.
Okay. Well, we'll look at it.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Where it's been a bit more busy recently.
Interesting. Right. Should we keep going through some of these recommendations because you've got a few more, right?
Yeah, just a few more, and then some just themes. Because it's like the it had recommendations about the project delivery model, which is just like use objective criteria when choosing the model and like value the public interest again. That there's reducing risk during procurement. Proven project elements should be preferred, is what it says.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Using service proven. Okay. Maybe reviewing the Canadian content requirements. See, that's one for the provincial government to look at, which hopefully it gave some recommendations for what could, maybe incentivize the development of Canadian industries without necessarily denying us trains that work, kind of thing.
Well, denying us trains that work or making us subject to the whims of Bombardier.
Yeah. I think their transit section got bought up by Alstom, right?
Yes.
So it is the whims of Alstom now, basically.
Oh, okay. Because I heard Bombardier are kind of sus when it comes to price negotiations sometimes. Okay, foreign people, this is the price. Okay, domestic in Canada, yeah, that's $8 quadrillion. Who are you going to go to? Someone else? You can't.
That's
Good
true.
luck.
It's just them, or at least it was until they sold off all of their divisions. Largely.
There's a Bombardier testing facility right next to my for planes.
I love how it says on Wikipedia, it says fate acquired by Alstom.
Your fate is sealed. You are bought by Alstom.
That's a fantastic way to phrase it, yeah.
Yeah, so just some quick themes as well that are present in the other stuff, like promoting collaboration and integration. Integration was a big problem during the project, and collaboration as part of that. And another large theme is transparency, very important for the testing and everything that we went over. Transparency would have been very good, so that doesn't happen, where you just have basically the city, passing tests it should not be passing.
Yeah. It's kind of safe, guys.
Do you really need a fire suppression system? Again, it's not necessary to making the train go. So
yeah,
fine.
Exactly. In fact, old trains used to run on fire. So, I mean, it would kind of run better if you don't have a fire suppression system.
It'll make the train want to run even faster because it'll be running away from the fire that's burning nearby. So really, it'll just improve efficiencies and speeds.
Yeah, exactly.
I think using the fire to run some of the rolling stock, bringing back some steam trains.
Bring back steam trains.
Diversify.
Steam streetcars, in fact. Steam LRT.
Perfect.
Especially the underground portion.
So I was just thinking, that would be fine. That's okay. Look, it's only like 3 stations. It's fine. You can have a little steam, a little smoke.
It'd be nice, actually. A little sauna in the winter.
Very true, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the report, basically. So now we can kind of talk about what's happening now.
So, okay, we've been through the report.
Yes.
If we take a step back for a second, can you in some ways summarize what went wrong here? Because I was asked that the other day when I mentioned I was doing a series on this, and I kind of fumbled through a bunch of the reasons that we talked about, but it was kind of like, well, there's a lot. So I don't know if you're able to more so summarize or pinpoint in a more specific way. Okay, if you look at this holistically, what went wrong here?
I think there's definitely some themes of what not to do in a transit project, and I think having good relationships within a project is very important. I think that led to a lot of bad faith things happening in this project, so that could have helped avoid a lot of the corruption just if there was good relationships kind of going on, or at least I think that's a theme of the report, definitely. I think difficulties with integration in like a lot of ways between like Alstom and other companies, right? Between all the different, just between all the different contractors and all their different subcontractors, even just Alstom having to use the Canadian content requirements and having to integrate with all of those new Canadian companies. It's really important in such like a complex project, like you said. Just integrating everything together is so difficult, and should be really taken as an important part of the project. and so maybe using also P3s to do that integration, difficult to enforce. And then also just using reliable strategies and technology is really important. You know, kind of using stuff that works and works, and maybe even is standardized. Amazing for a transit project in terms of taking the time it takes down, getting more transit built for less money and less time. That works well. I think those are like maybe three big themes. I don't know if I've missed anything.
I feel like that makes sense. Though if I were to try and like take a step back, because I've been like reflecting on this a lot lately, because I don't know, just like you, I think too much about transit, especially a transit system that I've literally taken twice. But like,
Good time.
yeah, it was working great both times I took it. It was excellent service. Cannot complain. 10 out of 10.
My experience has been similar actually, but I haven't taken it that much.
Again, when it's running, it's fine. which we'll probably get to. But I feel like I keep on mulling in my head. I know that this is like you said, an inquisitorial thing, not a accusational or whatever the other word was. Like we're not accusational, investigational, something like that. We're not looking to like lay blame here.
Adversarial.
There you go. Or at least the report isn't. But then when I start thinking about it, maybe I'm looking to like lay blame here or there, or figure out like, okay, who did wrong, what went wrong, what could have like changed. And like for a while there, I was thinking like, okay, what could the city have done differently? Really, could they have done anything differently? They don't know how to run a train. They haven't done this before, so they have specifically gone with a system where they get to offload all the risk and the knowledge and the experience to a private company. So could they have done anything different? And for a while there, I was thinking like, I don't know that they could have, but I feel like they could have. Like one of the fundamental things with any of these projects is like, you have to have in-house expertise. You have to have a team that like actually working for the government that knows how to run one of these projects. Like the fact, go on.
Oh, I was going to say the city could have done different because they could have, some members of the city could have let the city council know actually what was going on.
Very true. Yeah. I don't know. Like I come back to that bit a lot too. I feel like that's almost like downstream or like a side effect of a lot of the other stuff though. Like I feel like just so blatant and so funny in how low stakes it is. Like we keep saying corruption because that's what it is, but it's not like they're like embezzling money. They were just lying.
They were just trying not to look as bad. They were trying not to get in trouble.
Yeah, basically they were fully just trying not to get in trouble, which I mean is very bad, and they wasted a lot of the money that the city could have used for other shit, for more transit potentially, which is bad. But like it feels so low stakes. But I feel like on a fundamental level, you can't just like hire a company and be like, build me a transit system. You need the expertise. That's like one of like a key theme across projects is like, if you have a good in-house team capable of managing this shit, it can go well because you're able to direct the contractors and all the private companies to do things. But if you don't, they're just going to start doing their own shit, whatever they think is right. And like it fundamentally, the responsibility of the project still lies with the city. Like even if they try and offload it, it's still their project.
At least to the citizens. Like we're not going to be like, hey, what the heck, this company. Like we're going to be like, hey, what the heck?
Honestly, even just fundamentally, like both to the citizens and in general, it's still their project. Like they got someone else to do it, but it's their train. They're responsible for it.
Yeah, I agree.
That's my rant. I don't know. You feel free to correct anything you disagree or think it's a little too forceful, but
I think that's a lot of good points. I think technically they had, I don't know if this counts as in-house expertise, but they had a contractor acting as in-house expertise.
A lot of the time. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
It just they came up a few times in that testing part of the project where they were like, this train is not good. And it was somewhat ignored. And I think they just went along with the project in some places where they should have stopped it as well. Right? Like where like when the train wasn't service proven at all.
Yes.
That's something huge.
Yeah.
You need
seems
like
like an
some
issue.
leadership there to take action
And
and
they
be like, this isn't working.
they stood their ground once apparently, and it said that
That's
what was
true.
it CAF, the Spanish train company wasn't service proven or whatever. But then with Alstom, they just
Yeah. And then the city stood their ground one time in testing before being like, okay, fine, you passed this time, even though you haven't changed any of your answers, which I don't think we give them much credit for that. But
and they like helped develop the 2019 testing requirements, right? But then they just went back on the wrong list, and yeah, I don't know.
yeah, like I feel like one of the big things that stood out when I was like glancing through the report was that there was a line, something along the lines of when I forget if it was Alstom or RTG or one of the companies was looking to like get input from the city, like they normally would with a partner who's actually going to be like running the service. You know, that would make sense to get like input from them and collaborate with them. But I think it said something that when they would talk to the city, they'd get more so like operational concerns rather than like operational insights. So the city's more so just like worried about things rather than actually having any kind of like useful input that would come from experience of running things. And obviously, you know, they didn't have the system before, but that's not to say you can't start to build up the expertise. Like reflecting on it, I don't know, maybe this is too simplistic, but they probably should have poached some transit experts from other cities. Ideally, some like places that build good shit at a good price, like a Sweden or like somewhere in Spain or Japan or something. That I think could have really helped. But
Even I always say this, like, if we're talking like, get one from Tokyo, sure, that'd be fantastic. Probably the best, undoubtedly the top 3 transits in the world, probably often one. But I keep saying this like to the east and the west, you can go pretty close. You can go to Toronto or you can go to Montreal and get a much better transit system. So like, just get somebody from one of those cities to be like, so what do you think of this project? What do you make of this? Anything we should change? Like that, right? I feel like that should be an option.
yeah, I think so. One of the things that I would hope happens in future is that Metrolinx might start to take on that kind of a role in consulting, because that's like a province level agency that can help other transit or more local transit agencies with their shit. Like they're already doing that to an extent in that they place like group bus orders and stuff so that small towns can get a lot more like cost savings and nicer vehicles. But at the time the O-Train was being planned, Metrolinx was just they hadn't really built anything. Because when did the Confederation Line start? Like 2013 or so?
Just like 2010.
2010. Okay, yeah, I think that's pre Eglinton Crosstown starting
like,
construction.
Some of the process started, I guess, in 2009.
Speaking of Metrolinx, what do I have to do to get them to extend the the Go system to Ottawa? Because can you imagine?
I know, right? That would be amazing.
I could take a Go train to Ottawa for like, probably like $35 or something. Oh my gosh,
that would be pretty based.
So they extend EXO as well.
Oh, that would be excellent. Yeah.
And then Ottawa would be the hub.
Easy.
Yeah, that would be nice. I don't think they have any plans to extend that far currently. Like they are extending, I think it's the Kitchener line to, is it London as well, which is a big expansion. But that's the only major one I think on the books right now.
Also, Kitchener line starting on the week.
That would be nice, or at least all the way to Kitchener. I was looking at it the other day, and it goes to what's it, Bramalea on the weekends?
I call it. What's it called? Because I call it Bram. Does anyone know?
Bramley? You might be right. I'm just saying this out loud for the first time. I think
it's Brampton.
Yeah,
Brampton's what it is.
Brampton.
Yeah. Because every time I go to visit my friends from university, it's like, anytime Friday, I'll just take the train down. It runs like hourly or whatever, maybe even half hour. So I think it's hourly, but so I'm like, okay, I'll just go after work whenever, boom, easy. But then going back, I gotta like run a precise operation where I take a Go train or I take a Go bus from like the university to Brampton, and that runs like every like 3 hours or something, and the train or like get one from Aldershot or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the history of Go Transit would also be an interesting one. I got that on my list because like there's a lot that it needs to do to improve and there's a lot that they're doing to improve, but it has come so far in the last like decade. Like it is immensely better than it used to be.
And it's funny with Go Transit because my main thing is just like, give us more.
hmm And oh boy, they really are. They are working on it
Oh, good.
quite a bit, which is good. Like it feels like it can't come fast enough, but they are doing shit.
Very nice.
And kind of nice in that it's all like a series of smaller projects. It's not all just like mega projects, like say a crosstown or an O-Train phase 1. So it's just constant little bits of progress here and there that are adding up, plus some bigger projects.
Yeah, I think the mega project part of the O-Train is also something pretty important part of the problems.
Yeah, I don't know. Like we've talked about this in previous episodes, but do you think they could have phased it out a little bit more, maybe?
Maybe like building the train itself. I I don't know. I don't know if the alternate universe where Brian O'Leary doesn't cancel the project would have been better or not.
Mhm.
Where that like O-Train extension doesn't use a tunnel or whatever, maybe uses more reliable trains. Actually, I think I looked it up, and I think the trains hadn't been used commercial service on that line either, as of
Oh.
2005 or whatever. But I think they're working fine now, wherever they are.
That's good.
Hey, speaking of broken O trains, so I was saying, yeah, I was on it at Blues Fest directly before it was broken for like maybe the longest time it's been broken.
I think it was about a month. I forget.
And not as long as
Okay.
that second derailment.
Okay, yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
not like the secondary.
Just
But
felt
what
like a long
was
time.
So it was like midway through July or something, and then it opened before September started for sure.
okay? So what went wrong? Because like, sure, it got heavy use. I would say not like specifically, but right before and after Blues Fest. But yeah, again, we're not talking Tokyo people pushing heavy use. So like, what went wrong?
They were inspecting the wheel axle bogies like they do, and they found too much grease on one of the wheel axles apparently. I don't actually know why, engineering wise, that's how the problems work there, but apparently that was a bad thing kind of thing. So they shut down the system, and then when determining like the safety note to put it back into service, they kind of found some new things that they needed to change to stop the wheels from, I guess, not
Greasing up.
greasing up. I think they also wanted to kind of tackle a larger problem with the wheels, with the bogie axles, because apparently after this, they, instead of replacing the bogies every 175,000 kilometers, they are now replacing them every 60,000 kilometers.
3 times as often.
Yeah, which is kind of big for the maintenance team and everything. So that's partially, or I think one of the main reasons why the O-Train is also now running like single car trains most of the time. So that's what I talked about earlier, where now there's trains that are higher capacity because like most of the time they're single car trains. Even during rush hour, there's like a few double cars, but there's a lot of packed single car trains kind of thing.
How's the frequencies? Like, have they increased the frequency a bit?
No, they've kind of maintained the every 4 or 5 minute frequency. They say they're kind of able to do this because OC Trans was still at like 60% of pre-pandemic levels,
Really?
which, yeah,
Wow.
I think 63% they got up to in September this year, which was like big good almost.
Actually, well, I guess that kind of makes sense because so much of Ottawa works for the government, and so much of the government moved to at least hybrid, if not almost completely online.
Yes. The federal government is even, I think, shutting down some offices because there's so much work from home. And they are the biggest employer, like you said. So it's a big shift for Ottawa, especially, to work from home. Yeah, but like if you think of like 60% of pre-pandemic levels, the O-Train can move, or it was set up with every like 4 or 5 minute frequency to move 10,000 people per direction per hour. And so that's what they were moving like pre-pandemic on the bus system, like 10,000 people. So like 60% of that is kind of like just over half the trains. So it kind of fits with the ridership, but it's still very packed, and the double cars don't necessarily line up perfectly. It's not just like increasing the capacity by 10% on all of the little trains. It's just a few trains are double the capacity. So it is yeah, but they're trying to keep up with the replacing the bogies every 60,000 kilometers basically. And if they're able to do that while running less trains and less bogies, then I guess that's the plan.
Well, how packed are we talking? Like you said, about like every 45 minutes, single car. Like that must get pretty packed at rush hour.
I've been on it at rush hour like once or twice, and it was pretty packed. It was kind of restrained by the amount of doors. The one I was on, at least, where just everyone was crowding around the doors, and there's less doors on like a light rail vehicle than a metro, right? So there was the places where the bogies were that were kind of like empty. There was a few people like sitting there. Not even the seats were full, and I was just kind of standing there because I was going to the end of the line anyway. And everyone was packed around the doors. So it was, and it took a good bit longer to unload and load up people at least at like U Ottawa and Rideau, I think, some of the most popular stations, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty packed. Not like, I assume, crush load necessarily, though. At least as far as I know. But
yeah,
I've heard some people complaining about it.
Makes sense.
So they've got some plans for this though. Like a month ago, they released some plans on the grease, the wheel axle grease, and just the wheels in general. A plan on how to tackle that. They also released plans on the lightning strike. If you remember, the train got taken out for a little while because of it got struck by lightning, or like the overhead wires did, and also because of freezing rain. So they've got some plans for all of these. The lightning strike one, it was very technical. I wasn't quite sure what was happening. They listed like 9 things they're gonna do to help stop lightning strikes, or not stop lightning strikes.
No more lightning.
And lightning in Ottawa.
Yeah.
To help,
I can get behind that.
Mitigate the risks there, I guess. But then the freezing rain,
which is a common Ottawa.
It is a common Ottawa occurrence. It was interesting how you phrased the Eglinton Crosstown thing, though, because I think the problem with the freezing rain was where the train goes over the Rideau River, there was like part of the Rideau River was melted, so there was a lot of mist, and it just kind of hit the rails or the wires and froze. So I think you mentioned that was the part they were worried about, or the person asking the question was.
Yeah, it was an elevated section over the Humber River.
Yeah.
Which, as much as, I mean, sure, Ottawa had an issue, we do that a lot, including over the Humber River in another spot on the TTC system. So it's fine. I think it'll be fine.
On the subway, or?
Yeah, it crosses over it on line 2.
Because I think it froze the overhead wires is the other thing, right? So the subway has the third rail, and I don't know if that would be different.
That's a fair point. I assume that the crosstown is overhead wires. I think so. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do a third rail when it's running in a median on the street. Yeah. Some transit things can go between the two. I think it's all overhead wires. So that is actually a fair point. That we do have an entire network of streetcars that use overhead wires.
Yeah. I assume
now they should all use third rail.
Just trying to like jaywalk across the street, or even just cross the street normally. Yeah.
Stay alert. Look where you're going.
Exactly.
Look at the rails.
Honestly, I remember when I was younger, like whenever I rarely if you like cross train tracks or like abandoned ones by like the green belt or whatever. I remember just because I read something about the third rail, I would even then, try not to touch the rails when I was crossing, because I'm like, ooh, I don't know if they're electric or not. Yeah, the lime kiln trail, like fully electrified.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm sure they keep
Yeah.
all the old rail paths and whatnot electrified.
Yeah, just in case.
Maybe the Ottawa train rails were electrified when the lightning struck it.
Yeah, maybe.
Who's to say?
But there were some short-term plans to fix the freezing rain, maybe some anti-icing chemicals, some monitoring for ice conditions. They don't have a non-electric recovery vehicle. So if the wires aren't working, then the train is kind of stuck out there. So getting like a diesel train that can go in and help recover a train.
You got to get out and push.
That's actually fair. That's smart. I would not have considered that, but the power is down. The trains do be stuck.
Yeah.
That's where you need the steam locomotives
True.
to go in and push the other electric ones.
They can warm up the wires.
Warm up the wires.
Yeah.
Just go post under the wires for a bit.
No. I say hybrid trains where they can switch to steam if the wires freeze.
Yeah.
100%. There's just a giant like furnace and pile of coal in the like operator's booth at the front of each of them.
Yeah. Just in case.
You can put it in the passenger section so they can shovel it while you're driving.
Yeah, true. If you're bored or you want to go faster.
You want some extra heat, you can stand by.
If the snowstorm's too bad, you get fucking drafted into the OC Transit coal shovelers division.
Hey, that's unionized.
Oh, amazing. We love a union job.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be if you're just using passengers. That sounds like some scab shit.
That does sound like
or some gig worker shit.
Yeah. I got a seasonal coal shoveling. Just for the summer while I'm off uni. Just shoveling coal on the OC Transpo.
Very good, yeah.
Yeah, the OC Transpo should have more coal-powered vehicles.
That's true. It'd
be good.
It would be something.
Yeah. I mean, we've got no like coal power plants left, right? So you can just you got to use
the coal for something.
What do we do with all this coal?
There's just a massive like stockpile at Kathleen Wynn's house. She's just kept it all there, all shut down. Yeah. It's a strategic reserve we can trap into. Yeah, power Ottawa's transit.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, and then in the long term, they said they will explore heat tracing in the overhead wires. So, like, I guess heating the overhead wires somehow, and weather stations at key locations, like at the so that they can be really aware of the weather conditions in the problem areas. I guess
that checks out. I feel like you could do a really small version of that, or you probably should have a small version of that. Like, you could set up like a little Raspberry Pi with some like a thermometer and shit on it.
Just to be clear, you mean the operating system Raspberry Pi, not the pastry Raspberry Pi.
I do, yes.
Yeah.
The tiny little computers that you can like fit in your hand that are typically used for that kind of thing.
You don't just
or you could just toss a pie down.
Wall. Yeah, on the top wall of like one of the stations with a thermometer on top of it. There you go.
Yeah, perfect. And then you just send a guy around to read the Raspberry Pis. See if they're covered in water, it's been raining. If it's kind of hard, it's very cold out.
If it's not very nice and warm, then it's hot.
If it looks gross, then it's been out too long.
Yeah, you can change the pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think these are good plans.
Yeah.
And then there's the grease on the wheels. They've got some plans for that. Like in the short term, they're replacing the bogies and expecting the bees. And the restraining rail. They moved the restraining rails. There's rails on a at least on the O-Train that, so just in case the O-Train like derails on like a corner, or to make it not derail on a corner, basically for safety reasons. But apparently, I think the classic integration problem here, like the people who made the rails were North American and made them to some North American standard, and Alstom made the trains and didn't expect them to be there, I don't think. So we moved the restraining rails slightly so that the wheels wouldn't scrape up against them at all, because they were doing that.
Yeah, just to like visualize it and picture like a track for a train. It's got like the two rails on it, the middle rails. Then this would be just additional rails kind of outside of those, so that if a train starts to tilt, like hit up against the rail and stop that, basically. But I think it's just different standards versus like North American versus European restraining rails, or maybe Europeans at all. But I think it might just be different standards.
I
And again,
forget
like you
which
said,
one it is.
integration.
Yeah,
European trains on American tracks
I'm sure
or
if
North
they
American tracks.
talk to
In
each other.
Canada.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're also doing speed reductions, which you could probably tell if you ride the O-Train. But it's especially if you're coming in from the east, a lot of the biggest curves are around Herdman and around Tremblay, where there's a lot of speed reductions. Also from Rideau to Ottawa, the train is going fairly slow on those sections to try and reduce wear and tear. There's also ongoing external oversight by a separate engineering firm to kind of make sure things are safe. So then there's some medium turn ones where they install lubrication things on the curves to try and make the train move smoother through there. Smart bugs are capable of monitoring the condition of axle hubs. I don't know how that works. It's
Smart bugs.
Yeah.
I guess it's just something kind of sensors you'd install in the axle, so that instead of having to switch them out every 60,000 kilometers, this would just be like reading out or constantly checking how degraded it is.
Yeah.
So that's just a guess, maybe not constantly, but periodically checking at least.
Yeah, I think so. And in the long term, redesigning the wheel axle assembly. So this was a big thing to come out of that, the grease-wheeled stoppage, where they're telling Alstom and RTG and stuff that there needs to be a wheel axle redesign kind of thing. An approved design is expected to be in place by the end of 2024. But then I saw somewhere else, I think, that it might take, actual rollout might take 2 or 3 years. But there are promises, at least, that this will permanently fix this issue, at least. Maybe allow for the speed reductions to go away and the replacing bogies stuff to go away to hopefully bring down maintenance costs.
Honestly, it does seem like the O-Train is trending upward in terms of reliability and stuff. Like, I am optimistic about, like, maybe in a year or two, it'll be like a regular train system that you can actually, take to work every single day, and it only breaks like 1 week of the year max.
Yeah, it's like every transit project has problems. The O-Train has had a disproportionate amount of problems, but it's getting better, I think. And they've got plans, is what I'm trying to say as well.
Well, hopefully they're just all front loaded. They're just front loading all the problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we can just talk about a bit about OC Transpo and the future, I think. First of all, there's the bad news, I guess, the funding issues. This stuff about this came out, I think, just before we recorded the first episode, or a month before or something. There are a lot of concerns about funding for OC Transpo right now. And as I said before, ridership is at 63% of pre-pandemic levels, which in terms of fare revenue is not great for OC Transpo. And it's not looking like it's going back up super fast or anything as well. I think I was trying to find comparisons for that 63% as well. I think I found the TTC was like 61% of its pre-pandemic ridership like a year ago. So now it's up even further, but I don't know what exactly.
Yeah, I
It
think
must
it's
be
still not
pretty-
great, because
Really?
the TTC is facing massive budget shortfalls as well, like half
Why?
a bill a year or so, I think.
Why?
In large part, I think just decreased ridership. Like, it's super reliant on the ticket box around fares for their revenue. They don't have too many other sources. So, I mean, that's I think a big debate for the last little while, but especially right now, is how is City Hall going to get this funding? Like, are they just going to try and convince the province to fill it in? Or I think there's a big push to try and like add a new tax onto like parking lots, or specifically like corporate parking lots that might help cover part of it. But but hopefully they figure something out.
But it's not only the fare revenue drop off, it's also, I think, for just an increase in all of the costs as well because of, I guess, just inflation in general. But like everything's gone up significantly in costs. It's nice that one of the O-Train lines, you can, the Confederation line, the electricity costs haven't gone up much, but then like the Trillium line diesel costs have gone up like threefold or something. So that's not fantastic. For costs. Apparently also I think the gas tax wasn't increased by the federal or the provincial government, which
is the Trillium line even open yet?
No, but they're just estimating they're gonna have to pay a lot more. And this is all about like in 25 years we're gonna be a few billion short of where we were supposed to be. And yeah, so
less than ideal.
That's especially caused problems where the stage 3 of the O-Train.
So this is the end of Standard Humans.
No, the end of the podcast.
Review O-Train Part 3, Age 3. So yeah, Part 1, prehistory, going from basically the beginning of time to when the O-Train was first designed, basically covering all that, and then the second age, testing and implementation, third age, opening to now, fourth age, Ghost of O-Train future.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll talk about, maybe cover some of this budgeting stuff, cover some phase 2, some phase 3, the potential phase 3 at this point. Maybe talk about the big bus review that you just said happened, which could have a big impact on OC Transpo service in future.
Yeah, we can have we can have a on fully recorded me getting my heart broken by my favorite bus routes not existing anymore.
Exactly, yeah. All that to look forward, and probably more of the random tangents and riffs that you've come to expect.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about the crosstown and the REM in every episode of this so far, and we probably will again.
As we should, yeah.
As is right, really.
But yeah, so everyone get on that coal shoveling on the LRT, please. It'll really help things out.
It will, yeah. It'll make things run so much faster. But until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.